Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We were very recently at Hansa Studios in Berlin. I'm sure you saw the video. If you haven't already, please check out the link to the Hansa Studios tour. It was absolutely amazing. Hansa, as I'm sure you're all aware, is incredibly famous for making a lot of wonderful records with artists, of course, like David Bowie, Depeche Mode, and many, many others. It's a wonderful studio in an amazing location in a beautiful city. At Hansa, I was very blessed to teach a masterclass to 10 students who flew in from all over the world. Best of all, we had an amazing German artist called Charly Klauser. Charly is a multi-instrumentalist. She sings, songwrites, plays guitar, piano, bass. I'm sure we didn't have her play bass, we had a bass player. But best of all, I think she is an incredible drummer, a really incredible drummer. So we got together with our good friends at Lewitt, who gave us a bunch of mics, and we used this opportunity not only to use Hansa and the incredible studio space, but also to use some affordable mics. So you're going to hear the Lewitt mics in action on the drums. We had them overheads. We also had a mic pull back on the kick. You're also going to hear 2 sets of mics on Lewitt mics on the piano as well, and compare them with others. It's a lot of fun to be able to do this. And of course, just being in Hansa is amazing. And you can soak up the atmosphere and see an incredibly talented artist at work. Please enjoy the video. Starting with the snare. Probably, one of the most obvious setups that we do. 57, top and bottom. Nothing unusual there. But one thing that's probably unusual to say before we get too deep into this is we decided to stay entirely on an SSL. Now, I'm sure we all know that the accepted wisdom is as you track on a Neve or an API and you mix on an SSL. That may well be true, but a lot of the records that we grew up loving from the very late 70s right through the sort of mid-80s, this kind of golden period of Peter Gabriel and all these incredible records that I love from that period were actually recorded and mixed on SSLs. In Britain in particular, and of course in Hansa, Hansa had 3 SSL consoles, which were also tracking consoles as well as mixing consoles. In fact, in Studio One, the original console they bought is still in there. So that's what we're doing. We're actually tracking on the SSL as well as mixing on it. So we're getting a very different kind of sound. I've been really, really enjoying it. My SSL I mainly use to mix on. Sometimes I track some stuff on it, but essentially it's a mix console. This one, we're tracking on. Okay, so 57 top and bottom. We didn't do any compression on the snare whatsoever. There's barely any compression going on anywhere. But we did have some fun here on the hi-hat. So on the hi-hat, one of the Academy members brought his own microphone, an NT5, Rode NT5. We also have an AKG 452 and a 57. Those of you that have followed us before in videos will know that we love to do double miking on hi-hats. It's a Dave Jordan trick. So we'll take a condenser and a 57 and tape them together. In this situation, we put the Rode on there just to see how it would fare against the AKG. And it did well. It did well. But I do tend to favor the 57 these days. Either that, and sometimes I use an SM7 on the hi-hats. I like a bit more of a mid-rangey hi-hat sound rather than a super, super toppy. So on the toms, we've got the DTP 340 Lewitt microphones, which just clip on, and of course, they're dynamics, very inexpensive. Paired with a very tight polar patterned condenser, a Neumann KM185. And these KM185s are paired with Sennheiser 421s on the bottom, and of course that polarity is flipped. And it's a pretty full sound. Of course, the floor tom shares exactly the same miking techniques as well. This mic got knocked, but yeah, we did exactly the same thing. They're not exactly in phase of each other. They're picking up different sounds. They're both done to sound the best they possibly can. Next up is a pair of 87s as overheads. And then what was really, really nice is we had the LCT 040s, which just sound phenomenal. And these are like $200 for the pair. So ridiculous, they're a matched pair. So we've been doing a sort of shootout combination using those two mics. So 87s, beautiful mics obviously, compared with the LCT 040s. There's also a third U87 back here, which is that kind of over-the-shoulder mic sound, which I believe gives you a pretty accurate view of the full drum kit. You add some 60 Hertz in there and you'll end up with quite a nice drum sound. All right, another fun mic here. And this is, you've seen a lot of people do this. I think for me, most well-known would be Simon Phillips. He always sticks a mic in here, I think usually a 57 as well. So that's picking up the shell of the snare, which sounds pretty awesome. So the D112 here on the kick is not as far in as I normally go. It's just on the edge. I like the sound. It's got a little bit more low end. It's a little bit more natural. It's not quite as scooped. Because quite often if you go in, come in about halfway and point just at the beater, you get super snappy sound, and I usually heavily EQ it. This one I didn't as EQ as much. Then of course a good old fashioned FET 47 there, which is getting the sound of the kick itself, like a much more natural, almost bottom air to it. But I think one of the things that I really loved about this setup was being able to use the LCT 441 Flex, which is, you know, a very inexpensive Lewitt as well. And that gave us a whole capture, I don't know, a sort of, not even room tone, but just like an accurate sort of view, a mono view of the kick, but also the whole kit. Now, this is a fun one. This is just a splash cymbal dumped down there and then an M160. So the M160 is actually pointed away from the hat a little bit, but it's nice. It's the reflected sound off of the cymbal. It's a great, great trick. Now, the assistant engineer had a pair, Swedish, and she had a pair of these Thoresen microphones, which are made in Sweden. And they've been really, really beautiful. Now, we've noticed in this room, it's pretty dead in here. So wherever we put room mics, it just became almost like a delayed version of the drum kit. So there was a lot of flamming going on. So what I decided to do was which is fine because that's what this room was designed to do, to be super, super dead, you know, that sort of mid-late 70s drum sound. So what I decided to do was go for a bloom line, put it down low so it's not all cymbals. So I've got an accurate stereo version of the drum kit. And then, which is obviously phase coherent because it's in a bloom line. And then if I want to get a bigger room sound, I could just take that nice stereo view and maybe send that to a verb and, you know, exaggerate it a little bit more. It's like knowing the room, knowing its capabilities, playing up to what's best about it is really a smart way to go. So we got ourselves a big fat dry drum sound, and then we have the options to make it bigger. And apart from that, we have a mono 67 up against the wall. And that's really completed the drum sound. It's one of the least amount of room mics that I've done. Normally I get a lot more experimental with room mics, but there's no real need to, because whatever I did, it still sounded like, you know, the same drum sound. And it just means that I'm in a room and I'm inherently getting what's great about this room. All right, next up. So we have a 440 Pure. We have the new LCT 140 Air, and then a KM84. And combined with an 87 for just an overall view of the piano, and then the mono 414. Now, in all silliness, we actually monitored them all together, and it sounded pretty crazy. It sounded really, really good. But the reason why we're doing this is we are trying out different miking combinations and seeing, the more expensive mics versus the inexpensive mics, but also really one thing I've always enjoyed about the Lewitt microphones is the detail on the high end. It's really, really nice. It seems to have less coloration. I mean, for instance, the 640 TS, the microphone that sees both sides of the capsule at the same time, so you get like the perfect stereo. Sounded the most natural of any microphone we've tried. We compared that to a pair of 87s, we compared that to all kinds of other miking techniques, and that's been a favorite. So we've used the 140 Air recently at my studio and just had amazing results. So here in Berlin, we got to try it again. And then for the live recording, we did a piano vocal, so we went just SM7. Something to give us the most amount of rejection. Even though it's going to stay live, we're going to use the same vocal take with the same piano take. Just something that gets the most amount of rejection in case we want to compress the vocal a little bit more. Not so worried about the vocal bleeding into the piano mics as much. It's more about like the piano bleeding into the vocal mic, because if I started to compress this vocal heavily, or even medium amounts of compression, I don't want the piano bleed to be so much that it starts to overtake the lead vocal. And if we wanted to, we could have maybe baffled it off, but it just sounded great to have, the piano in the room.
Try to take a picture of the ocean. It's not the same. Have you ever tried to paint the warmth of the sun behind the mountains? It's not the same. Only in your memories, 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 you really feel the thrill. You really feel the thrill. All your journeys, your achievements, are your failures and your childhood dreams. I wanna go everywhere. So many things to cross off our list. I wanna go everywhere, everywhere. Oh, 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 oh. I wanna wanna go everywhere. So many things to cross off our list. I wanna go everywhere, everywhere. Traveling the world is all I want. As long as we move on, we can't go wrong. On a photograph, it's never as beautiful as our hearts. Have you ever tried to catch the smell of your hometown? You know it's not the same. You just can't replace the feeling of holding someone in your arms. Traveling the world is all I want. As long as we move on, we can't go wrong. On a photograph, it's never as beautiful as our hearts.
So please don't forget to download these multi-tracks so you can hear and mess with them. I hope you enjoyed that. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and I'll speak to you all again very, very soon.